On Tech News Today, Samsung unveils some very cool and very large smartphones. Google has found the cheat codes for testing drones in the United States, and we'll tell you about the augmented reality group that Google has already spun out as a separate company. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Thursday, August 13th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa gift card when you get a loan. And by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. With one simple integration, you can offer your customers every way to pay, period. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/TNT. Tech News Today is a show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan. Welcome to the show. Our co-anchor today is Fusion editor Kashmir Hill. Hey, Kashmir, how you doing today?
I am good. Hi, Mike.
Now, you and I, before the show, were talking about this strange case of a gentleman named Aaron Khanna, who was an intern at Facebook and lost his job. And it's a tragic tale. Can you tell us what you know about this case?
So he was almost an intern at Facebook.
Okay.
He apparently had an internship lined up with them. And then he decided, he had noticed when he was using Facebook Messenger that the app was sending his location to friends by default, and that his friends were sending their locations by default. And so he decided to create this tool that would scrape that data so that you could create, apparently he's a Harry Potter fan. He called it the Marauders map. And you could basically like track the past locations of your friends based on the messages that they had sent you. He released this tool. He was all excited about it. Journalists who are always excited about Facebook privacy scandals were excited about it. Facebook was not excited about it and apparently asked him not to talk to the press. And then hours before he was supposed to leave for his internship in California or wherever it was based, Facebook informed him that he didn't need to come, that they were rescinding the internship because of the way that he had like handled the disclosure.
So did he actually talk to the press?
Now he's talking to the press. He wrote up a whole case study of what happened with LaTanya Sweeney, who's a really well-known privacy academic, and they released it today, or they released it this week, and so now it's out in the press, and it's getting a lot of attention.
Wow, that's incredible. I bet you Google would hire him. They love that kind of stuff. So, and they love to stick it to Facebook as well. So, yeah.
I think I looked like he actually had an internship at Microsoft, though I'm not sure if that's the one they ended up taking instead of the Facebook one.
Well, you can't buy this kind of publicity when you're a pre-intern. So good luck to him. Well, let's jump into our top story. Of course, Samsung launched two gigantic phablety smartphones today, the Galaxy Note 5 and a new Galaxy S6 Edge Plus. What a name. They also rolled out a few other goodies. Sean O'Kane is a reporter for The Verge and joins us now. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that name is a handful, isn't it?
It is. It's it's better than the phones from Korea and Taiwan and China used to be. They've gotten much better at naming things, but this is a little bit hard to say. Now, let's start with the easier to say Galaxy Note 5. What's new with the Galaxy Note 5?
Well, the Note 5 is actually weirdly kind of like what the S6 Plus would have been. It's a 5.7-inch Quad HD Super AMOLED screen. Same one we saw in the S6 and the S6 Edge, but just a little bit bigger this time. So you're going to get a lower pixel density, but it still looks really, really good. It's still one of the best screens on the market. You've got this. They've added a clickiness to the S stylus so that you can pop it out of the phone a little bit easier now. And I think one of the coolest things about it is when you pull your phone out of your pocket, you can take that pen out and write right on the screen, even while it's off. So if you really need to write something down quick, you don't need to worry about going through a lock screen. You don't need to wait for the fingerprint reader. You can just write something down, immediately save it, and put your phone right back in your pocket.
And how does that work? Can you see it as you're writing it?
Yeah, you can see it shows up as just white text on, you see the screen light up a little bit. It's not just straight black. And it gives you a couple little commands up at the top of the screen to delete the message or save it. And you get a couple different options that you can do. So it makes a really easy, it makes a better sell for the S Pen and the Note idea than their big thing is there were too many steps in place before to being able to actually write. And so this eliminates a lot of those steps.
Yeah, I love that it's almost a security protection because then you don't have to, go through the hassle of putting your code in, which kind of turns people off. What about the pushing people to use the live stream feature?
Yeah, so in the new Note 5 and in the S6 Edge Plus, there's a native live stream to YouTube feature, which is kind of cool. You just pull up the camera app, and in one of the modes, there's a live streaming option, and you can push a live stream right to YouTube. You can also schedule it. So if you want to do it at a later time, you can do private live streams. So you can make it invite only, or you can just grab a public URL and share it, wherever you want to share it. Obviously, the big difference here is that this isn't as contained an experience as something like Periscope. You're still just pushing it to YouTube, and it's not as integrated as being able to just like automatically tweet a live link. And people are going to have to watch it either on the browser or in the YouTube app. So it's a little bit kludgier than the Periscope and Meerkat experience, but I think it's pretty powerful to be able to get. It's really great quality. It's 1080p at 60 frames a second, as high as that. And we got a demo of it last week here in New York, and it looked really great. So I think a lot of like semi-professionals and professionals are going to really use this.
Yeah, and Facebook came out with its live streaming service, and it originally is only for celebrities, handpicked celebrities. Then we heard that it's being rolled out for verified users, and in this case, Google's coming out with something that broadcasts to a little site that a few people use called YouTube. So I think they have a huge advantage in terms of eyeballs on this thing, even though, as you said, it's not. It doesn't have that warm and fuzzy app, contained within an app feel to it. So tell us about the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus. This sounds like a really interesting phone from what I've heard so far. But tell us what's interesting about this to you.
Yeah, well, this is pretty similar to the Note 5. It's another 5.7-inch Quad HD screen, and pretty much the same internals as the S6 Edge. You've got the octa-core Exynos processor. You have a little bit more RAM this time around, 4 gigs of RAM instead of 3. The same 16-megapixel back camera and 5-megapixel front camera. But probably the biggest innovation with the Edge this time around, a lot of people complained with the original Edge that there was just not a lot of use to that Edge screen. And Samsung had put, news tickers and clocks and stuff on that side. And it wasn't really something that I know we didn't really like it, and a lot of people wanted a bit more. And so they've added the ability to quick switch between apps from a tab you pull in from the side. And it's a lot like the People Edge that they brought out with the S6 Edge earlier this year. But you can now access it no matter where you are on the phone. It doesn't have to be on the home screen. And it just makes it easier. The 5.7-inch screen is, a little harder to reach with one hand. So you don't have to reach all the way down to the hardware button to switch between your apps. You can just swipe in from the side now.
So they also announced a hardware keyboard, kind of almost a device that turns your Samsung into a BlackBerry or something. I don't know. That's probably an unfair characterization. Tell us about the keyboard.
Oh, I think that's exactly what they were going for.
Okay.
There's a niche out there. There's a lot of people that really still like hardware keys, and there are definitely times where I'm mistyping and kind of wish I had that instead of a software keyboard. And so this thing, it looks a lot like the typo case that we've seen in the past that like attaches to the bottom of a phone and offers a BlackBerry type keyboard. But this thing actually slides over the top of the screen, and instead of using, it actually can tell which key is being tapped at any given time. And that's how it works. And it pushes the screen up a little bit too. So you lose a little bit of your screen real estate, but you're actually sliding the cover over the screen. So you're not making your phone any bigger, lengthwise at least. And it works on both the Note 5 and the S6 Edge Plus. And we don't really know much more about it. We don't know when it's going to be out or how much it's going to cost. But yeah, there's a look at it right now. I think that's the coolest thing about it is that you can get it over your screen and it'll kind of scrunch up the rest of the UI. and give it some space. And with a 5.7-inch screen, you still have a lot left. And then, yeah, you can just kind of throw it on the back. And if you don't want to use it at any given time, and keep it with you, it's, not a lot of people are going to run out and buy this at at a local store, but a lot of people want something like this. And if they make it cheap, it's a great impulse buy.
And what's Samsung doing to get into the digital payment space? It's going to have something similar to Apple Pay?
Yeah, Samsung also announced Samsung Pay today, and we got to learn that not only is this going to work with NFC payments, just like Apple Pay or Android Pay, but it also is going to work with MST payments. So you can basically push the way a regular magnetic card reader works is by reading the sort of magnetic transmission that comes from in the card, and the phone will be able to actually push that information to most magnetic card readers, which the big problem with NFC payments right now is a lot of stores are still trying to onboard that technology. And this is a really great stopgap in the meantime, where you're going to be able to just put your phone near that card swipe and it'll be able to read it that way. And that pushes Samsung Pay to most retailers out there now, as opposed to just a handful. And that's a really powerful asset for Samsung.
Yeah, unfortunately, the retailers don't know that they have that capability. Yeah. MST stands for Magnetic Secure Transmission. Now, this is essentially Loop Pay, right? They acquired Loop Pay, and that gave them this capability. Is there any indication that they've improved or augmented it in any way, or is this just Loop Pay built in?
It's basically just Loop Pay built in. And you're right. The biggest issue with this is going to be convincing someone at a counter that what you're doing is actually going to work. And that was the problem with Loop Pay too. We tested that out last year, and it was, it got us a couple weird looks here in Midtown Manhattan when our social media editor went over and tried to pay around the counter with the magnetic stripe. So that's probably the biggest issue here. But I think enough retailers know that NFC payments are possible, and enough are already dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think it'll take long before this is something that people understand what's going on. And it also probably won't last too long as like a go-to technology. So once we get NFC payments rolled out nationwide in a much bigger distribution, I think we'll be fine.
I finally saw someone carrying around in Las Vegas at the hacker conferences last week, one of the coin cards where they just had uploaded all of their credit cards to the coin, and you just like push a button to switch from credit card to credit card. And the advantage is you can actually like slide the magnetic strip through. And it struck me as a much easier tool to use in a smartphone to make payments for things.
Yeah, I've actually used there's another company called Stratos, and you can do the same thing. You just tap on the card and switch between different cards that you have. And I think there's still a lot of value for these startups. It's easy to think they might be getting scared because all these phone companies are rolling in automatic payments into the phone. But there's a lot of value still in having, a smart card that can switch between all your cards. Because, if you're at a restaurant or somewhere where you're going to have to hand off your payment method to somebody else, you don't necessarily want to hand them off your $700 phone that could break if they drop it. So I think there's still a lot of value. I like using stuff like that here and there, and I'm not always using NFC payments.
And here's a pro tip for using Samsung Pay or Apple Pay. If the credit card reader is within reach, don't ask permission. Just use it. And they may be surprised that you successfully do it, but they don't care. It'll go through just like a credit card. So that is my pro tip for today. And also, Samsung introduced at the end, they flashed the Gear S2 smartwatch. They didn't tell us anything about it. They did show it. It looked really, really cool. And I can't wait to get more information about that. And we have some more news about that device coming later in the show. Sean O'Kane is at TheVerge.com and on Twitter at SOKane1. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sean.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good day, guys.
More news for you coming right up, but let's talk about Prosper. Prosper is, if you want to borrow money, you don't want to go to the bank. That's a bummer. You definitely don't want to borrow from family or friends. You could do a Kickstarter if you're going to launch a new company or something like that, but then there are a lot of problems with that as well. Prosper invented the peer-to-peer lending business years ago, and they are the leader in that business and have the best service out there. You can borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days and use the money for just about anything you desire. And by peer-to-peer, what does that mean? You go on there and you fill out a profile and say what you want to borrow money for. And then an investor will come along and choose to invest in you and your project, your dream, your business, whatever it is that you're borrowing the money for. It's a wonderful way to give a great return for the investor and a really, really excellent loan for the borrower. You don't want to rack up more debt on your credit cards. Instead, just pay them off with a Prosper loan. Your rate won't change. You can save on interest if you pay the balance early. And to check your low rate instantly without affecting your good credit, just go to prosper.com/twit. And for a limited time, Prosper is offering Twit viewers and listeners a $50 Visa gift card with your low interest loan. You get up to $35,000 in your account in as few as 5 days and a $50 Visa gift card. Just go to prosper.com/twit for this special offer that's just for you, Twit fans, Tech News Today fans, and the Twit Army. Google has been secretly testing its Project Wing drone delivery system, and in the United States, too, according to a report at The Guardian by Mark Harris. In the U.S., flying drones for commercial purposes is tightly restricted, but it helps to have powerful friends. In Google's case, that friend is NASA. Mark Harris writes for a variety of publications, including, of course, The Guardian, but also The Economist, IEEE Spectrum, the MIT Tech Review, and others. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Glad to be with you, Mike.
So glad you're here. Now, how did you find out about all this? Obviously, Google didn't announce it.
No, it involved a little bit of research through some filings with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and also at our friends at the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. So, I mean, basically, I spent a lot of my time just looking through these databases and seeing what's out there. And I spotted this filing with the FCC that showed that Google was going to be doing some research on certain wave bands, certain frequencies with their drones. Now, those frequencies I was pretty sure were LTE and 4G data frequencies. And so I just started asking a few questions about Google and asking questions at the FAA. And it turns out that Google actually admitted that they'd been working with NASA and testing their drones in the US for over a year. Prior to this, we only knew that they had been testing in Australia, where they had this promotional video showing, this is the one right here, showing this fantastic space-age-looking drone coming in and dropping a bag of dog treats to this farmer. It was a great video. I mean, it looks like a fantastic piece of kit. I mean,
literally dog-fooding their own product.
Literally dog-fooding their product, exactly. And it's quite different, you see, from the quadcopters that pretty much everyone else is working with. So, I mean, it's an interesting bit of technology. And it turns out that Google had actually teamed up with NASA to sort of start thinking about testing how these drones are going to operate with each other and with other things in the environment. So talking about air traffic control for drones and automatic air traffic controls. We're not talking about someone in a flight control tower with a Mike Yanko Charlie kind of thing. This is the automatic systems where the drones would talk to each other, avoid each other. And it's really important stuff to happen, and NASA's really doing some great work in making this happen. At the same time, Google is getting the fantastic advantage of being able to test on home soil. They've been testing their drones for a year, just up the road, we think, from Mountain View where they work. Certainly the test I found out about is going to be happening in rural California. So it's an interesting take on the matter that Google has been a little bit more under the radar than Amazon, which applied for permission from the FAA to actually test its drones and eventually got it. Google's really been sort of going a little bit under the radar, as it were, by using this agreement with NASA.
Mark, why do you think they do want to keep this on the DL? Why not, let everybody know they're doing this cool thing? They're partnering with NASA. They're doing drone research. Why did they kind of keep it secret?
I think it's because of this perceived rivalry with Amazon, this perceived rivalry with other delivery organizations. No one really knows how the drone space is going to emerge, how we're actually going to get drones come down our streets and drop packages off, how they're going to talk to each other. The company that manages to get, to get that system working, to get working with the regulators and to work as closely as possible with them is really going to have a great advantage. If Google can actually be part of the team that designs the air traffic control system to deliver these, to get these drones out there, I mean, they've got a head start there. They're 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else. And I think that really this partnership really makes a lot of sense for Google. It gives them time to test their units in a system that they hope will actually become the default system that everybody has to use. Amazon is being involved with NASA too. They're perhaps a little bit. We don't know of any tests they've done with NASA, but that's certainly something they're going to be involved with. And then the interesting part of this is that we've also got the phone companies involved. The proposed mechanism for this air traffic control system is using 4G data and LTE data. And that really means that wireless companies are going to be front and center here in using their phone towers to navigate, communicate, and monitor these drones. And of course, perhaps it's no coincidence that Google last year announced its, or was it this year? I'm not sure. Project Fi. Google is actually going to be a wireless company itself.
This year, yeah, that was this year.
Mm-hmm.
So NASA used something called the Certificate of Waiver or Authorization, COA, which you reported in your article. Isn't that normally for government agencies? Why does a private company get to use that waiver?
Well, that's one of the most interesting parts. Yeah, absolutely. It was designed so that organizations like fire departments could start thinking about drones for surveying fires, sheriff's units, the military, and of course organizations like NASA. These are public institutions, precisely the people that we want, perhaps to start getting these systems working in a way that is helpful to all of us. Up until a year ago, the only way that a private company could even get its drones in the air was through one of these COAs, these COAs. And that's the route Google took. But the problem with them is that a COA generally has pretty strict restrictions on the publicness, the fact that it actually has to be either owned or operated by a public agency and has to have no commercial interest. There has to be no commercial purpose to the test flights. And that's where perhaps there's a little bit of a gray area here. Google, in its filings with the FCC, specifically said that actually the stuff we're testing does have a commercial purpose. It does go to our bottom line and might reveal things about our business strategies, and we would rather that isn't public. So perhaps there's a little bit of a question mark here about Google's actions. But Google has now applied for the same sort of exemption that Amazon has for its drones. So perhaps it's sort of moving away a little bit from relying on NASA and will start to be more of a explicitly commercial flight tests.
What does it tell us about the ambition of NASA, which has kind of scaled back its space program and is now looking at drones? Are they kind of focusing on nearer skies now?
The thing does look like a tiny space shuttle.
Yeah. I mean, aeronautics is part of NASA's name. I mean, they've always been quite involved in the technical side of airspace control. Obviously they've been experimenting with drones and all kinds of winged rotary aircraft, rocket ships for decades. This really does, I think, it really shows NASA's sort of go-ahead attitude right now. They've done some, by getting really involved in this airspace, it gives them a relevance that is beyond just big old launchers and Pluto missions, which are all fantastic stuff, but it gives them sort of a daily relevance that I think, it speaks well to the agency there. And obviously, from their side of things, leveraging a big company like Google to help them run these tests and to get the system working makes a lot of sense too. It's cheaper, and it gives them access to some of the latest technology in the industry, which arguably now is even beyond what the public agencies or even perhaps the military is really working on. These iterations with Google and Amazon, their drones are changing so quickly, and many other companies, DJI. There's some really fantastic equipment out there that NASA's eager to get its hands on.
Yeah, and of course Google is very much in league with NASA. They lease the airfield that houses Hangar 1, which is right near the campus, Google campus in Mountain View. And so this is a relationship that's been going on for quite a while. And that lease, by the way, I think extends 65 years or some crazy thing like that. Mark Harris is at meharris.com and on Twitter at meharris. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, bye-bye. Intel yesterday joined the ranks of Silicon Valley companies releasing diversity reports. But unlike every other major tech giant, Intel appears to be making actual progress. Rani Molla is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and joins us now. Welcome to the show, Rani.
Thanks, Mike. Nice
now,
to be here.
What did Intel's diversity report say exactly that surprised you?
Well, to be fair, Intel has been putting out its own government diversity reports. This is a document called the EEO-1 that every large organization has to put out, but it's normally no one gets to see it, but they've been putting it out since 2002. The problem with those is that they're a government document that's kind of unreadable. It's really hard to tell who's in what job, and so this is the first time they put out a Google-style diversity report, and by that I mean it says the percentage of people in tech who are women or people of color, and the percentage of people in leadership. So what's surprising is that for a company as big as Intel, that has over 100,000 employees, that they are in the ranks of smaller. I mean, they've beat out Twitter or some other companies with the percentages in these roles.
How significantly did they beat out other companies?
I mean, that's the thing. We've been tracking this since last year when a lot of the big tech companies started putting out their diversity reports, and they're all in the same league. It's exceedingly tough. They all seem to have this mandate of hiring more people of color and women, but not by much. These are percentage points.
Now, you wrote that Intel changed some definitions about how it measures diversity, which makes comparisons difficult. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Earlier this year, they said that they were going to, this year they're hiring 43% of their new hires will be diverse hires, and that means that they're going to be Hispanic, Native American, and Black, whereas there's already a lot of Asian Americans who at least work in the tech sector, if not the leadership sector of these companies. They're also talking about full representation. By 2020, they want to have full representation at Intel, but that doesn't mean their company is going to look like the American public. It actually means that their company is going to look like the pipeline. Full representation for them means market availability for workers.
Obviously, a lot of companies have started doing these diversity reports. Do you think that they'll actually have an effect that exposing publicly what their workforces look like is going to encourage them to hire more diverse employees? Absolutely. I mean, just the transparency of it. Even since last year when we first started collecting this information, each of the companies, since they've put out their now 2015 diversity reports, have gone up at least a percentage point in each section. And that's small, it's painstakingly small, but it's also, there's 100,000 plus employees at some of these places. So it's a big deal, and it's a big deal for the people working there.
Now, the problem of diversity in the tech sector in the United States is a very deep one, and it's an intractable one. It's educational, it's cultural, it's related to how people are portrayed and who is portrayed in what roles in movies and TV shows and things like that. It's a very, very difficult problem for a company like Intel to solve, even though they spend a lot of money on it. Google has as well. One little loophole that hardly anybody talks about is the relationship between diversity numbers and immigration. Is there a chance that these diversity reports could have a negative effect? I mean, for example, let's say you wanted to hire more women. Hiring them from China or India doesn't really help the problem we have in the United States with training women engineers. Or does it help? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that whole connection?
Sure. I mean, and often these companies break out their gender and racial statistics worldwide and in the U.S. So you could see the difference here and there. So you could also call them on, oh, wait, you don't have enough women of color here. And to speak to what you're saying about the many, many, many barriers there are, like I've been talking to a lot of the diversity officers at these organizations, and there's tons of barriers. There's tons of reasons why there isn't full representation, but it's also in the company's best interest, to have the most diverse workforce possible.
Yeah, and I think that it's great that Silicon Valley is getting so much heat on this. I would like to see a lot more heat applied to Hollywood and elsewhere in the society, the educational system, etc. And one of the things that, of course, Silicon Valley can do is to produce products for children that encourage all kids to get, to find out if they really want to be an engineer and to get excited about it. And of course, that's happening. There's a thriving sector in educational software. My own son works at a company called Tinker, and he actually trains kids. And it's really interesting because the kids are so young that they haven't been taught yet that certain types of people are supposed to be engineers and other people aren't. So they don't know it. So they all jump in and they're really excited about it. And we just, the risk though is that as they get older, that the culture will convince them that they either are or aren't supposed to be interested in tech based on who they are. So we'll see where this goes. Rani Molla is at WSJ.com and on Twitter at Rani Molla. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rani.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good day.
Well, just 2 days after the big Alphabet announcement, Alphabet or Google or whatever it is right now, has already spun out Niantic Labs into an independent company, according to a post on Google+. By independent, I don't mean they'll be under the Alphabet umbrella. They'll be truly separate and independent. Niantic is an augmented reality company best known for the game Ingress and also for the Field Trip app. This surprised me, Kashmir, because I figured, a company like this is perfect to just throw it under the Alphabet umbrella. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they spun this out as a separate company unless there's another division within Google or Alphabet that's working on something like this that make it a competitor. I don't know. I can't really figure this one out. Any thoughts on why they're doing this?
Yeah, I think everybody's confused about why Google's doing what it's doing right now. But I don't know if they thought it would be better to have a completely separate gaming environment that's different from the other stuff that they're doing around virtual reality. I don't know. It's odd. But I was surprised Ingress has been downloaded that many times.
It's huge.
I didn't realize the following was quite that big. And
it's rabid. I mean, the fans are legion, and they're really into it. It's a massive multiplayer role-playing game that takes place in meat space. How can you beat that? And Field Trip is less well known, but this is a great app. Basically, what they do is they make deals with all these companies that have databases, the Boston Art Society and the Hollywood Historical Society and all these different databases, and they plug them in. And then you walk around and you get notifications saying, oh, this is where they filmed this silent movie in 1922. They even had a Google Glass version. So if you're wearing Google Glass walking around, it would pop up and you just have this knowledge appear to you about what happened in the spot where you happen to be standing. Really cool app. Those are both, they're both the ideal use cases for augmented reality. One of them is just location information that just appears to you in your field of view. That's one big augmented reality thing. And the other one is a real world game that takes place in the real world that has information and, fictional fantasy to go with it. So very cool. And if I was the Emperor Larry Page, I would have kept this under the umbrella, maybe make it its own company or something like that. But that's just me. Well, Google yesterday announced a site called Android Experiments, which they created to show projects using Android. It's basically the Android equivalent of Google's Chrome Experiments, which was launched in 2009. All included projects have to be open source and work on the KitKat version of Android or higher. Accepted projects will become available for download on Google Play. This just makes a lot of sense, Kashmir Hill.
Yeah, just reward people for being creative with your platform.
Yeah, absolutely, and look forward to seeing what people come up with. Well, NASA, speaking of the devil, is crowdsourcing a design for a smartwatch app for astronauts. America's Space Agency is partnering with Freelancer.com to get designers to come up with app designs. The app will run on the Samsung Gear 2. According to a NASA press release, the app needs to feature crew timelines, a caution and warning feature, communication status, and, of course, timers. Because time is of essence when you're in a space suit floating around in the vacuum of space. This is a great idea, although it's really interesting that they're going with the Freelancer.com.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see it living right there. NASA has gotten so savvy about their PR, though. They seem to really understand what excites people and how to get, technology geeks excited about what NASA is working on, even though NASA is kind of having to scale back right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're having to be creative, but I would also categorize this story under a larger umbrella of stories where the consumer products have become so great that even the government is using them because they're better. A perfect example is that they're coordinating bombing runs against ISIS in Syria and Iraq using Google Earth because it's a widely available free thing you can download. And so, they can get information from people on the ground who don't necessarily have, the full, $1 million Pentagon kit for identifying targets. They have a smartphone with Google Earth running on it. and they can actually identify the location of potential target. Anyway, it's amazing. There are lots of examples of this, and it used to be that consumer technology depended entirely on the Pentagon and the government. You know, like GPS would be a great example. Creating the internet would be another example. But now it's kind of coming back to them, and they're just going to freelancer.com and Google Earth to, like, you know, do stuff that used to cost a fortune for them. So anyway, it's an interesting story. Somebody, one of us, ought to write a column about it or something. I'll take this one.
Okay.
All right. Well, iRobot is best known for its Roomba floor cleaning robots. Now the company's robotic lawnmower has gotten U.S. regulatory approval. Someday, Kashmir Hill, I'd like a device that does it all, that cleans the floor and then goes outside and mows the lawn. Very cool.
I don't know. I don't love my robots with blades.
Yeah, too much.
Too much,
Yeah,
I think.
especially with all the hacking stories out there. You know, the sort of the novel Neuromancer, 1984, which is of course a seminal piece of literature. There's a scene in there where I believe it's a robotic lawnmower is leveraged by this artificial intelligence entity to assassinate somebody with the blade. So it's coming.
Yeah. I'm sure this will be, you know, this will be at DEF CON in 2 years as something that is being hacked. And, you know, I've heard from people with Roombas, they're pretty good, but they do like fall down stairs and they make mistakes. So I might not be buying this one right away.
Well, you know, the thing with the Roomba is that, you know, it's inside of a house, so it's unlikely to escape. But if your lawnmower goes astray and just like goes down the street and starts, you know, mowing down people's pets and things like that, it could be really bad.
Yeah, interesting liability issues.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good for the comedians, I guess. Well, Microsoft's Surface Hub has been delayed. The giant Windows 10 conference room interactive whiteboard won't arrive until January, sadly, which is at least 4 months later than Microsoft promised. Pre-orders began July 1st. The device comes in two models, an 84-inch model that costs $20,000 and which I want, and a 55-inch model that costs $7,000, which I'll take if I have to. So January. So look for it in January. Apparently, one of the problems is that it's more popular than they thought it would be, although they're not giving numbers. In product update news, Apple is working with more than 40 technology companies to make the iPad more work-friendly. They're internally calling it the Mobile Partner Program, but they're telling those mobile partners, don't say the words Mobility Partner Program. And it involves training companies on how to make better apps. Most participants in the program are unknown, but some include ServiceMax, Revel Systems, and VMware Inc.'s AirWatch. Kashmir Hill, this isn't going to save the iPad. Let's just get that right out there.
Yeah, I mean, where I do see the iPad most often, though, is in restaurants and as a payment platform. So that alone seems like it could sustain quite a few sales.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking, was I talking to you, Jason, about I was talking to Megan about the school district here in Petaluma, which is getting rid of its Chromebooks and jumping on iPads, which I think is a terrible idea, but some people disagree with that.
LAUSD tried that and it failed miserably.
Yes. Yeah, that was a catastrophe. We covered that on a previous show. Big problems in LA. All right, well, we got some more news for you coming right up, but first let's talk about payments with Braintree, one of our sponsors today. You know, Braintree, of course, is well known among people who have tried it for being super easy to use as a developer. 10 lines of code, plug it in, and you're good to go with all the benefits of Braintree. But even more important than that, I think, is making payments easy for your customers, for your users. And that's what Braintree is all about. There's a huge pandemic of something called cart abandonment in the world. And what happens is people want something. They want to use your service. They want to buy your product. They want to download your app. They want to use your company. And they start the process of paying for it. And it's either confusing or it's difficult or time-consuming or something happens to their connection, and they give up and go away. They want it, you want it, but it doesn't happen because of mobile cart abandonment. And Braintree is the solution for mobile cart abandonment simply because it is so fast and easy to use for the people paying for it that payment will go through and they will get what they want, and you'll get what you want right away. You can accept MasterCard, American Express, Discover, Diners Club, PayPal, Apple Pay, Venmo, Visa cards, even Bitcoin in more than 130 currencies. this is a great solution, and most importantly, it's easy for your customers to use. That's why Uber uses it. And by the way, my wife corrected me. I said on yesterday's show that I've never used some of the, for example, I've never used Hotel Tonight. She says, we use Hotel Tonight all the time. She uses it. I haven't used it personally. We also use Uber and Airbnb and some other of these. And all of those companies use Braintree, and that's why they are so easy to use from a payment perspective. Invisible payments is what companies like Uber give you because of Braintree. Braintree gives you a full stack payment solution, support for all payment types that your customers might want. So you start today accepting PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, credit cards, and so much more, all with a single integration across all platforms. They also have superior fraud protection, superior customer service, and really fast payouts. To learn more, and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to BraintreePayments.com/TNT. Tinder founder Sean Rad is reportedly returning to the company to become CEO again. He was replaced in March, just 4 months ago. Current CEO and former eBay and Microsoft executive Chris Payne will leave the company. A Recode interview with a board member said Payne wasn't a good fit. In other words, he was canned. And this comes right after the fiasco with some tweets from Tinder yesterday or this week based on an article in Vanity Fair in which they bragged about their huge user base in North Korea and some other things. Kashmir Hill, what a black eye for them from a public relations perspective, this whole thing.
Yeah, Tinder seems as tumultuous as the relationships it's helped to create. I mean, like Sean Rad took the fall essentially after the lawsuit by Tinder's former chief marketing officer about Tinder being this horribly misogynistic place to work. Now he's back. The tweet storm was crazy. I was wondering when they said they have this like huge user base in North Korea, I was wondering if the people who recently went there to run, the annual marathon basically fired up Tinder while they were there. And then that registered to Tinder as, oh, we've got North Koreans using the app now.
I think it's more likely that they're just lying. Or Kim Jong-un is like him using it. So who knows? It's a funny story though. And part of that, part of the kerfuffle was that Tinder basically, the article said, oh, a huge percentage of Tinder users are married and they're cheating, basically using like Ashley Madison or something like that. And Tinder said, no, a tiny percentage. Somebody did some independent research and it was somewhere in between. So
yeah, I think I heard some people say that Vanity Fair article is actually like great advertising for Tinder because it was all these guys saying like, oh, I just use Tinder to get laid and I don't need to have a serious relationship. Despite all the tumult at the company, it seems like Tinder's doing quite well. People seem to really like the app.
Yeah. And the thing that always creeped me out about Tinder was that, like, why does it have to be that convenient to date, to choose dates or whatever, however it is works? I mean, I wouldn't do it except I wouldn't do it, but like if it wasn't just a swipe, I wouldn't bother because who cares? It's like not that important. Anyway, it's really weird, and it's been a weird week for this kind of thing. Just like public, people in public being weird. These companies doing strange things, but it is fun for those of us in the news reporting business. Anyway, China's computer and phone giant Lenovo, let's get some bummer news here, plans to lay off 10% of its white-collar staff in the wake of reports that Motorola smartphone sales fell by 1/3, and the mobile division lost $300 million in the recently reported quarter. Something like 3,200 people will lose their jobs. Lenovo bought the Motorola phone business from Google for $2.91 billion, and they probably have buyer's remorse, would be my guess. It's even worse at Taiwan's HTC. That company announced plans to cut about 15% of its employees because of drops in both revenue and profits. The HTC One M9 flagship didn't sell as well as expected, but what is these days? Everybody in the smartphone market is being slaughtered on the high end by Apple and on the low end by Chinese upstarts. And so it is getting tough out there for smartphone companies, as we can see. We got some big numbers for you. 10 million. That's how many people have created Periscope accounts, according to Twitter, and 2 million people use it every day, according to Twitter. Do you buy this, Kashmir Hill? Do you think 2 million people are really using Periscope every day? Seems like a lot.
That seems like a lot. It does seem like technology companies are pushing us to do more live streaming. It's going to be like new selfie. But yeah, I wonder who these 2 million people are and who they're streaming to.
Well, this is the point that they've kind of done a quick, a fast one on us here. They said using the app. That would, I guess, include people watching streams. So the number of people streaming is a tiny minority of that 2 million, I would guess. So, you know, and what number of the 10 million signed up and never used it, or used it once or something like that and have
I think I'm one of those.
Yeah, I think I am too. I used it every day for a while, and now I don't use it every day. So who knows? But maybe I'll get a Samsung and use the YouTube
Maybe you need
feature.
to start periscoping the show. There's 2 million people who could be watching you.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, no. All right, well, I mean, when I was using Periscope, I was actually periscoping at the same time we were streaming. And, of course, the difference in the quality and also the audience was vast, I can assure you. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Pablo Gomez in Florida, who posted this picture on Twitter. He said that whenever they hear my voice, his cat and his dog, who are named Metallica and Ozzy, come running to watch the show. We got a dog named Ozzy here, too. Leo's dog. Anyway, so nice to be entertaining animals that can't speak English. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup or your cat or your dog. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Kashmir Hill, what are you working on these days? You always have these interesting stories. What's coming up next?
I want to go talk to that Marauders map maker and see what else he has in the works.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who is this?
This person we talked about.
Right. Yeah, okay.
The would-be Facebook intern.
Yeah.
I wonder what other companies he's trying to scare off.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, see if you can get Facebook on the record, because so far they're just kind of, you know, they don't look good. So maybe they had another reason for not bringing him on. Kashmir Hill, thank you so much, and it's great to have you on the show again. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
You can subscribe to Tech News Today on YouTube. You can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1700 UTC at twit.tv/live. You can subscribe to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. And you can follow me at elgan.com. Don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight. Today's guest is Recode's Kurt Wagner. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tech News Today. This show was produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Anthony Nielsen. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.